He stood at her door with divorce papers in his hand, and she opened it holding the hand of a child who had his eyes. 2 children, 5 years old. He never knew. She vanished the night she discovered what he truly was. No goodbye. No explanation. Just silence that carved through him like a blade he couldn't remove. For 5 years, he ruled an empire built on fear. For 5 years, she raised 2 lives built on love. Now, the most dangerous man in the Korean underworld stands face to face with the only woman who ever made him feel powerless. The twins don't know his name. She won't let him speak. And the truth between them is about to destroy everything he thought he understood about loyalty, family, and the cost of the life he chose. This is the story of a man who controlled everything, except the one thing that mattered most. The autumn rain in Seattle fell like whispered accusations. Kang Min-ho stood beneath the awning of a building he hadn't seen in 5 years, holding an envelope that weighed less than the silence it represented. Inside, dissolution papers, freedom, the legal end of a marriage that had already died the night she left. He'd waited for this moment, counted the days like a man counting bullets. But now that he was here, his hand hesitated at the door. She lived on the 3rd floor of a modest apartment complex, in a neighborhood that smelled like fresh bread and old rain. It was nothing like the penthouse they'd shared, nothing like the world he'd tried to give her, nothing like the cage she'd escaped. His security detail waited 2 blocks away. He'd come alone. This wasn't the kind of business that required guns or witnesses. This was personal. This was the last thread connecting him to a version of himself he'd buried long ago. Min-ho pressed the buzzer. No answer. He pressed again, longer this time. The intercom crackled. "Who is it?" Her voice. 5 years, and it still moved through him like something familiar and foreign all at once. "It's me," he said quietly. Silence stretched between the speaker and his chest. Then the door unlocked. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step a negotiation with the past. By the time he reached her door, his pulse had steadied into the controlled rhythm he'd learned to perfect in rooms where men's lives were decided by his word alone. But when the door opened, everything stopped. She stood there in a soft gray sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back, her face older in ways that had nothing to do with time. Beautiful, still, but different, guarded. And behind her, 2 children, a boy and a girl. Identical dark eyes, soft cheeks, small hands gripping the doorframe as they peered around her legs with the kind of curiosity that belongs only to the fearless. Min-ho's world tilted. "These are my children," she said, her voice steady but her eyes unreadable. "Minji and Minjun." His throat closed. 5 years old, maybe. The same age as the years that had passed since she disappeared. He looked at the boy, then the girl, then back at her. "Your children," he repeated, the words hollow. "Yes." The twins stared at him with expressions too innocent to understand what was happening. The girl, Minji, tilted her head. "Mommy, who's that man?" "Someone I used to know," she answered, never breaking eye contact with Min-ho. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The boy had his nose. The girl had the shape of his jaw. "Naomi," he said, her name unfamiliar on his tongue after so long. "We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," she replied. "You came to finalize the divorce. Fine, I'll sign. But then you leave." "Naomi." "I mean it, Min-ho." Her voice was iron wrapped in silk. "You don't get to walk back into my life and ask questions. You lost that right the moment I found out what you really were." The twins looked between them, sensing tension they couldn't name. Min-ho's gaze dropped to the children again. His chest felt like it was caving in. "Are they mine?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Naomi's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, something raw and ancient and unforgiving. "Does it matter?" she said softly. "You were never going to be their father anyway." The words hit harder than any threat he'd ever received. He took a step forward. She didn't move. If they're mine, he said, his voice low and trembling with something he couldn't control, then it matters more than anything else in this world. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Then she stepped aside. You have 10 minutes, she said. Then you leave and never come back. He walked inside. The apartment was small but warm, toys scattered across the floor, drawings taped to the walls, a life built in his absence. The twins followed their mother into the living room, watching him with wide, cautious eyes. Naomi crossed her arms. Say what you need to say. Minho looked at the children, at her, at the fracture of a life he didn't know existed. I didn't know, he said quietly. I know you didn't. You never told me. I couldn't. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. The night I left, I found out what you were hiding. I saw the documents, the deals, the people you controlled, the blood on your hands you pretended didn't exist. He flinched. I was pregnant, Minho. And I knew, if I stayed, if I told you, you would never let me go. You would have kept me in that world. And I couldn't let my children grow up surrounded by violence and lies. So you just disappeared, he said, his voice breaking. You took them from me before I even knew they existed. I didn't take them from you, she said, her eyes wet but her voice unwavering. I saved them from you. The silence that followed was suffocating. Minho looked at the twins again. Minji had her mother's smile. Minjun had his own serious expression. What are their names? He asked, his voice hoarse. You heard them. Say them again. She hesitated. Then softly, Minji. And Minjun. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the boy was staring at him with an intensity that felt too familiar. Are you our dad? Minjun asked suddenly. Naomi's breath caught. Minho crouched down slowly, bringing himself to the child's level. I don't know, he said honestly. But I'd like to find out. Naomi stepped forward. Time's up. You need to leave. Minho stood. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman he'd loved buried beneath the armor she'd built to survive him. I'm not leaving, he said quietly. You don't have a choice. I do. His voice was steady now, resolute. Because if they're mine, then I have every right to be in their lives. You gave up that right when you chose your empire over everything else. I didn't choose anything, he said, his jaw tight. I didn't know there was a choice to make. She shook her head. It doesn't matter anymore. It does. He took a step closer. Because I'm not the same man I was 5 years ago. Yes, you are, she said, her voice breaking. You're still the man who built his world on fear. You're still the king of something dark and unforgivable. And I will not let my children anywhere near that. He stared at her. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Cancel everything, he said into the receiver. Indefinitely. Naomi's eyes widened. He hung up and looked at her. I'm staying in Seattle. I'm not leaving until we figure this out. Minho. They're mine, aren't they? She didn't answer, but her silence was louder than any confession. Minho rented a suite at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. It was the kind of place where power whispered instead of shouted, marble floors, chandeliers that cast soft gold across expensive silence, and staff trained to recognize men like him without ever asking questions. But tonight, the luxury felt empty. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the Seattle skyline, his reflection ghostly against the rain-streaked glass. His phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages from his second-in-command, from associates in Seoul, from people whose livelihoods depended on his decisions. He ignored them all. His mind was still in that small apartment, still seeing Minji's cautious smile, still hearing Minjun's question. Are you our dad? He didn't sleep. By dawn, he'd made 17 calls, rearranged 3 major operations, and postponed a meeting that could have cost him millions. None of it mattered. At 8 a.m., he was standing outside Naomi's building again. This time, he didn't buzz. He waited. At 8:47, the door opened, and she stepped out with the twins, each holding one of her hands. They were dressed for school, backpacks almost as big as they were, bright jackets, messy hair still damp from hurried morning routines. She froze when she saw him. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice low. "I told you, I'm not leaving." The twins looked up at him with wide eyes. "Mommy, it's the man from yesterday," Minji whispered. Naomi's grip tightened on their hands. "We're going to be late." "I'll drive you," Minho offered. "No, Naomi?" I said no. Her tone left no room for negotiation. She started walking, the twins in tow. Minho followed. She stopped, turned. "Stop following us." "I'm not following you. I'm walking in the same direction." Her jaw tightened. "This isn't a game, Minho." "I know." He met her gaze evenly. "This is my life now." For a moment, she looked like she might argue. Then she just shook her head and kept walking. The twins glanced back at him every few steps. He kept his distance, but he didn't leave. They walked 3 blocks to a small elementary school with colorful murals on the walls and children's laughter spilling out from the playground. Naomi crouched down, adjusted their backpacks, kissed their foreheads. "Be good," she said softly. "We will," they chorused. As they ran toward the entrance, Minjun looked back one more time. His eyes met Minho's. Then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd of children. Naomi stood slowly, watching them disappear. When she finally turned to face Minho, her expression was exhausted. "You can't do this," she said. "Do what?" "Show up like this. Confuse them. Confuse me." "I'm not trying to confuse anyone," he said. "I'm trying to understand." "There's nothing to understand." She started walking again, away from the school. He fell into step beside her. "You lived your life. I lived mine. They're separate. They need to stay that way." "They're not separate anymore." She stopped abruptly. "Why are you doing this?" "Because they're mine." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." His voice was quiet but certain. "I see it every time I look at them." She turned away. "It doesn't change anything. It changes everything." They stood in silence on a sidewalk crowded with morning commuters. People brushed past them without a second glance. 2 strangers having a conversation that looked ordinary but felt like the edge of something irreversible. "I want a DNA test," Minho said finally. Naomi's breath hitched. "No. You can't stop me. I can refuse to cooperate." "Then I'll go to court," her eyes flashed. "You wouldn't. Try me." She stared at him, disbelief and fury warring in her expression. "You would drag them through that? Through lawyers and judges and—" "I don't want to," he interrupted. "But I will if you force my hand." "You have no right. I have every right." His voice rose, then dropped, controlled again. "If they're my children, I have every legal and moral right to be in their lives." "You think rights matter?" She stepped closer, her voice shaking. "You think the law protects you from the consequences of who you are? You're a criminal, Minho. You run an empire built on fear and blood. Do you really think any judge would give you custody?" "I don't want custody," he said, his voice rough. "I just want to know them." The honesty in his tone seemed to catch her off guard. She looked away. "You can't." "Why not?" "Because you'll ruin them." Her voice broke. "The same way you ruin everything you touch." The words landed like a knife between his ribs. He said nothing. She wiped her eyes quickly, angry at herself for showing weakness. "Go back to your empire, Minho. Go back to Seoul. Forget you ever saw us." "I can't do that." "You have to." "No." He shook his head. "I've spent 5 years trying to forget you. It didn't work. And now that I know they exist, now that I've seen them, there's no going back." She looked at him with something close to despair. "Then you're going to destroy us all over again." Before he could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. His right-hand man, June. He declined the call. It rang again immediately. Naomi watched him, her expression unreadable. This time, he answered. What? We have a problem. June's voice was tense. The Vancouver shipment was intercepted. The feds are asking questions, and Park's people are moving in on the East Side territory. Minho closed his eyes. Handle it. I can't handle this without you. You need to come back. I'm not coming back. There was a pause. What? You heard me. I'm staying in Seattle. You're in charge until I say otherwise. Hyung, you can't just… Minho hung up. He looked at Naomi. She was staring at him like he'd lost his mind. You just walked away from your empire, she said slowly. No. I delegated. That's not how your world works. Then my world is going to have to adjust. She shook her head. You don't understand. You can't just leave. They won't let you. They don't have a choice. Minho. She hesitated, something like fear creeping into her voice. If you stay here, if you keep showing up, they'll find out. Your enemies. Your rivals. And when they do, they'll come for us, for them. He went still. She was right. He'd been so focused on the fact that the twins existed.
Wait, if you're married or in a relationship, this message is for you. Do you feel like he doesn't really see you anymore? Like no matter what you do, he's distant, distracted. Almost like you're strangers under the same roof? The more time passes, the colder it feels. The laughter, the closeness, it's fading. And deep down you're scared. Scared that the connection you once had is slipping away. But it doesn't have to be this way. There is a path to being noticed, to being desired, to feeling close again. Scan the QR code now and take the first step. Don't wait. This moment, it's yours if you act.
He hadn't considered what it meant for them to be connected to him. In his world, family was leverage, weakness, a target, and he'd just painted one on their backs. Then I'll protect you, he said. You can't protect us from yourself, she replied quietly. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the truth she'd been carrying for 5 years. She hadn't left because she stopped loving him. She'd left because she loved them more. I'll figure it out, he said. How? I don't know yet, but I will. She studied his face, searching for the lie. She didn't find one. Finally, she sighed. You have 1 week. What? 1 week to prove to me that you're serious, that you're not going to bring your world crashing down on ours. And if you can't, if I see even a shadow of danger, you walk away. Forever. He nodded slowly. And if I prove it? She looked away. Then we'll talk about a DNA test. It wasn't a victory, but it was a chance. 1 week, he agreed. She turned and walked away, her silhouette disappearing into the crowded Seattle morning. And for the first time in 5 years, Kang Minho felt something he'd forgotten how to feel. Hope. The week began with surveillance. Not the kind Minho was used to, armed men watching corners, cameras tracking movements, but something quieter, more human. He learned Naomi's routine. She woke at 6 a.m., made breakfast for the twins, always something simple. Toast, fruit, scrambled eggs. They ate together at a small table by the window, sunlight catching in Minji's hair, while Minjin drew pictures on napkins with crayons he wasn't supposed to use at the table. By 8:30 they walked to school. Naomi worked from home, freelance graphic design, he discovered. She'd given up her career at a major firm when she left him. Started over with nothing but a laptop and determination. She picked the twins up at 3 p.m. Homework, snacks, a walk to the park if the weather held, dinner at 6, baths at 7, stories at 7:30, lights out by 8 hours. It was ordinary, and it was everything he'd never had. On the 3rd day, he stopped watching from a distance. He was waiting outside the school when she arrived to pick up the twins. She saw him immediately. Her expression shifted, resignation mixed with something softer. You're persistent, she said. I told you. I'm not leaving. Minji and Minjun ran up, backpacks bouncing. Mommy, we made art today. Minji held up a painting of what might have been a rainbow or a very colorful storm. It's beautiful, baby, Naomi said, smiling. Minjun looked at Minho. Are you still here? I am. Why? Naomi tensed. Minho crouched down. Because I'm trying to get to know your mom better. Are you her friend? I used to be. But not anymore? I'm working on it. Minjun considered this. Then he nodded, apparently satisfied, and grabbed his mother's hand. Naomi met Minho's eyes over the children's heads. She didn't say anything, but she didn't tell him to leave either. They walked together, awkward and silent and strangely familiar all at once. At the park, the twins ran to the swings. Naomi and Minho sat on a bench 10 feet apart. You're scaring me, she said quietly. Why? Because you're acting like a normal person. He almost smiled. Is that so hard to believe? Yes. She looked at him. The Minho I knew didn't do normal. He didn't sit on park benches. He didn't watch children play. He existed in expensive restaurants and private rooms where decisions were made that changed lives. Maybe I'm tired of that version of myself. People don't just change because they want to. No, he agreed. They change because they have to. She watched Minji and Minjun race each other to the slide. What do you want from me, Minho? I want to know them. And then what? You go back to Korea and send birthday cards once a year? I don't know, he admitted. I haven't thought that far ahead. Well, you should. Her voice was firm. Because they're children. They don't understand complicated. They don't understand half-truths and good intentions. They need stability. Consistency. Things you've never been able to give. I can learn. Can you? She turned to face him fully. Can you really walk away from everything you've built? From the power, the control, the empire? He didn't answer immediately, because he didn't know. I can try, he said finally. Trying isn't enough. Then what is? She looked at the twins again. Minji had convinced Minjun to push her on the swing. They were laughing. Proof, Naomi said. I need proof that you're willing to put them first, above everything else. How do I prove that? I don't know. Her voice softened. But until you figure it out, you're just a stranger who happens to share their DNA. The words hurt more than he expected. Before he could respond, Minjun ran up, breathless. Mom, can we get ice cream? Naomi smiled. Not today, baby. We have dinner waiting at home. Please, Minji joined in, clasping her hands together dramatically. Naomi laughed. You two are impossible. Minho stood. I'll buy them ice cream. 3 pairs of eyes turned to him. You don't have to do that, Naomi said carefully. I know, but I want to. The twins looked at their mother hopefully. She hesitated, then sighed. Fine, but just this once. They cheered. 10 minutes later, they were sitting at a small ice cream shop. Minji with strawberry, Minjun with chocolate, Naomi with nothing, and Minho with vanilla he didn't actually want. The twins talked nonstop, their words tumbling over each other in a chaotic stream of consciousness about school and friends and a hamster named Mr. Whiskers who lived in their classroom. Minho listened. Really listened. And somewhere in the middle of Minji's story about how Mr. Whiskers escaped and they found him in the art supplies, something shifted inside him. This was real. They were real. And for the first time in his life, he wanted something more than power. He wanted this. When they finished, Naomi stood. We should go. It's getting late. The twins groaned but didn't argue. Outside, the Seattle evening had turned cool. Streetlights flickered on. Thank you, Naomi said quietly, for the ice cream. Anytime. She looked like she wanted to say something else. Then she shook her head. Good night, Minho. Good night. He watched them walk away, Minji skipping, Minjun dragging his feet. Naomi's hand resting protectively on both their shoulders. And he made a decision. Back at the hotel, he made a call. June. Finally. Hyung, things are falling apart here. We need you. Sell everything. Silence. What? The Seattle operations. The Vancouver routes. All of it. I want out of the West Coast entirely. You can't be serious. I am. Hyung, do you understand what you're saying? We'd lose millions. Our influence. I don't care. Why are you doing this? Minho looked out at the city lights. Because I found something worth more than an empire. He hung up before June could respond. His phone immediately started ringing again. He turned it off. And for the first time in 15 years, Kang Minho slept through the night without dreaming of blood. The call came at 2 a.m. Minho's eyes opened in the dark, instinct pulling him from sleep before his phone finished its first ring. Unknown number. He answered without speaking. Kang Minho. The voice was familiar, cold, calculating. Park Sang-woo, a rival from Seoul. I hear you've gone soft. Minho sat up slowly. You have 30 seconds to tell me why you're calling. I'm calling because you've made a very interesting mistake. Park's tone carried quiet amusement. Abandoning your territory, liquidating assets, and all for what? A woman and 2 children in Seattle? Minho's blood went cold. You've been busy, he said evenly. Information is currency. You taught me that. Park paused. Beautiful children, by the way. The girl has your eyes. Every muscle in Minho's body locked. If you go anywhere near them, relax, Park interrupted. I'm not interested in hurting children. I'm interested in making you an offer. I'm not interested. You will be. The smile was audible. Come back to Seoul. Resume your position, and I'll forget I ever learned about your little family. And if I refuse, then the information becomes public. And we both know what happens when the wrong people learn about a weakness like this. Minho's grip on the phone tightened. You're threatening me. I'm offering you a choice, your empire or your family. You can't have both. Men like us never can. The line went dead. Minho sat in the darkness, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. He'd known this would happen. Known that the moment he showed vulnerability, someone would try to exploit it. But knowing and experiencing were different things. He looked at his phone, considered calling Naomi, warning her. But what would he say? I tried to protect you and instead I made you a target? No. He'd fix this himself. By dawn, he'd made 12 calls and activated every remaining contact he had in the intelligence network. By noon, he had a location on Park's people in Seattle. 3 men watching Naomi's building from a black sedan parked 2 blocks away. Minho's hands shook with rage. He made one more call. I need you to do something for me, he said to June, and I need you to do it quietly. At 3:00 p.m., Minho was waiting outside the school again. Naomi arrived with the twins, her expression shifting when she saw him. You look terrible, she said. We need to talk. Not here. Yes, here. His voice was urgent. There are men watching your apartment. Watching you. Watching the twins. Her face went pale. What? One of my rivals found out about you. He's using you as leverage. Oh my God! Her hand flew to her mouth. She looked at the twins, who were oblivious, chasing each other in circles. What did you do? I'm handling it. Handling it? Her voice rose. You brought this into our lives. You promised. I know what I promised. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. And I'm going to fix it. But right now, I need you to trust me. Trust you? She laughed bitterly. This is exactly what I was afraid of. This is exactly why I left. I know. Then why did you stay? Why didn't you just walk away when I asked you to? He looked at the twins, at Minji's bright smile, at Minjun's serious expression as he examined something on the ground. because walking away from them would have been worse than any threat I've ever faced. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. What are we going to do? You're going to pack a bag. Take the twins and come with me. Where? Somewhere safe. For how long? Until I make this go away. She stared at him. And if you can't, I will. She wanted to argue. He could see it in her eyes. But she also saw the truth in his. He wasn't asking. He was telling her this was the only option. 1 hour, she said finally. We'll be ready in 1 hour. Minho moved them to a private property outside the city, a house owned by someone who owed him a favor and knew better than to ask questions. It was secluded, surrounded by trees, with security that didn't look like security. The twins thought it was an adventure. Is this a vacation house? Minji asked, running through the rooms. Something like that, Naomi said, her voice strained. That night, after the twins were asleep, Naomi found Minho standing on the back porch, staring into the darkness. How bad is it? She asked quietly. Bad enough. Are we in danger? Not anymore, not here. She wrapped her arms around herself. I should have known better, should have stayed hidden. This isn't your fault. Isn't it? She turned to him. I'm the one who opened the door. I'm the one who let you back in. You didn't have a choice. I would have found out eventually. Maybe. But at least the twins would have had a few more years of normal. He turned to face her fully. They'll have normal again, I promise. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. His voice was steel wrapped in exhaustion. Because I'm not letting anyone hurt them. Not Park, not anyone. She studied his face. What are you going to do? What I should have done 5 years ago. Which is, leave that world behind. Completely. She shook her head. It's not that simple. I know, but I don't have a choice anymore. He looked back toward the house where his children slept. They changed everything. Naomi's expression softened. You really mean that? I do. For a long moment they stood in silence. Then she said quietly, They are yours. The DNA test won't tell you anything you don't already know. His breath caught. I figured that out the second day you were gone, she continued. When Minjun started walking, he had your exact stride, determined, unmovable. She smiled sadly. And Minji laughed like you used to, before everything got so heavy. Minho couldn't speak. I never told them, Naomi said, because I didn't want them to ask questions I couldn't answer. Questions about why their father wasn't there. Questions about what kind of man he was. What will you tell them now? I don't know. She looked at him. What kind of man are you now? He thought about the empire he'd built, the fear he'd cultivated, the power he'd wielded without remorse. And he thought about ice cream on a Tuesday afternoon and the way Minji's hand felt in his when she'd accidentally grabbed it thinking he was her mother. I'm trying to be the kind of man they deserve, he said finally. Naomi nodded slowly. Then that's what I'll tell them. She turned to go inside. Naomi? She paused. Thank you, he said. For keeping them safe. For giving them the life I couldn't. Her eyes glistened. Just make sure they get to keep it. The next 3 days existed in suspension. Minho left early each morning, returning late with shadows under his eyes and tension in his jaw. He didn't tell Naomi where he went. She didn't ask. The twins adjusted to their temporary home with the resilience of children who trusted their mother completely. They explored the woods, built forts from couch cushions, asked when they could go back to school. Soon, Naomi told them. Very soon. On the 4th morning, Minho didn't leave. Instead, he made breakfast. Naomi found him in the kitchen, attempting pancakes with the concentration of a man defusing a bomb. You're burning them, she said from the doorway. He flipped one. It was, indeed, burned. I've orchestrated $1 million deals, he muttered, but I can't make pancakes. Despite everything, she smiled. Let me help. They worked side by side in careful silence, her mixing batter, him trying not to ruin it. The twins appeared, drawn by the smell, and climbed onto stools to watch. "Are you making breakfast, mister?" Minji asked. Minho hesitated. He'd been Mister for days now. "I'm trying," he said. "You're not very good at it," Minjun observed. "Minjun," Naomi scolded gently. "It's okay," Minho said. "He's right." He served the pancakes, some burned, some underdone, all misshapen. The twins ate them anyway, drowning everything in syrup. "These are good," Minji declared through a mouthful. Minjin nodded seriously. "Better than Mom's." "Hey!" Naomi protested, laughing. And for a moment, just a moment, they felt like a family. Then Minho's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His expression changed. "I need to take this," he said, stepping outside. Naomi watched him through the window, saw his posture shift into something harder, more familiar. When he came back inside, the softness was gone. "It's done," he said quietly. "What's done?" "Park, the threat, all of it." She set down her coffee. "What did you do?" "I gave him what he wanted." "Which was? My territory, my assets and soul, everything I had left." He met her eyes. "In exchange, he leaves you alone. Permanently." Naomi's breath caught. "Minho." "It's done," he repeated. "You're safe. The twins are safe. That's all that matters. But you gave up everything." "No." His voice was firm. "I gave up things. There's a difference." She stared at him. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know." He looked at the twins who were arguing over the last pancake. "But I'll figure it out." "You can't just start over. It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because..." She struggled for words. "Because you're you. Because that world doesn't let people go. Then I'll be the first." She shook her head, something like grief in her expression. "You did this for them. I did this for all of you." He paused. "And for me." Before she could respond, Min Jun spoke up. "Mister, are you going to leave again?" The question hung in the air. Minho crouched down, bringing himself to eye level with the boy. "I'd like to stay," he said carefully. "If that's okay with your mother." Two pairs of eyes turned to Naomi. She looked at Minho. Really looked at him. The man who'd ruled an empire with ruthless precision was asking permission to stay in his children's lives. "I think," she said slowly, "that we need to have a conversation first." The twins groaned. "A grown-up conversation," she clarified. "Which means you two get to watch a movie." They perked up immediately. 20 minutes later, the twins were occupied with an animated film, and Minho and Naomi sat across from each other at the dining table. "I need to know this is real," she said without preamble. "It is." "How can you be sure? A week ago you were a crime lord. Now you're making pancakes and talking about staying. People don't change that fast." "You're right. They don't." He leaned forward. "But I didn't change in a week. I've been changing for 5 years, ever since you left." "What do you mean?" "The night you disappeared, I looked for you." His voice was quiet. "I searched for months, used every resource I had. And when I couldn't find you, I thought..." He stopped. "I thought you were dead, that something had happened to you because of me." Naomi's expression softened. "I kept running the empire," he continued. "Kept making deals, kept consolidating power. But it was hollow. Every victory felt like a loss because you weren't there to..." He broke off again, jaw tight. "Because I'd lost the only thing that made any of it mean something." "Minho, I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "I'm not asking you to forget the things I've done. I'm just asking for a chance to be in their lives, however that looks." She was quiet for a long moment. "If you stay," she said finally, "there are rules." "Okay." "No violence. Not around them. Not anywhere near them. Agreed. No lies. If they ask you a question, you answer honestly. Age appropriately, but honestly. Okay. And if? Her voice wavered. If you decide this is too hard, if you want to leave, you don't just disappear. You tell me. You tell them. You give them closure. I'm not going to leave. You don't know that. Yes, I do. His gaze was unwavering. Because I've already lived through losing you once. I'm not doing it again. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I loved you, she whispered. 5 years ago, I loved you so much it terrified me. And when I found out what you really were, it broke something inside me. Because I knew I couldn't save you, couldn't change you, couldn't keep loving you without losing myself. I know. But she gestured toward the living room. They didn't choose any of this. They're innocent. And if you hurt them, I won't. If you do, she continued, her voice steel beneath the tears, there is nowhere in this world you'll be able to hide from me. Despite everything, he almost smiled. I believe you. She wiped her eyes. So what now? Now, he said, I learn how to be a father. 6 months later, Seattle had never looked more beautiful. Minho stood in the kitchen of a house that still felt too new, too clean, too safe, but was slowly beginning to feel like home. Through the window, he could see Naomi in the backyard, reading on a lounge chair while the twins played in the grass. Minji was teaching Minjun some elaborate handshake she'd learned at school. They kept messing up and dissolving into laughter. His children. The words still felt surreal. Dad, come help us. He froze. It was the first time Minji had called him that. He stepped outside, his throat tight. What do you need help with? Minjun keeps forgetting the last part. Minji demonstrated an impossible combination of claps and finger snaps. Maybe because it's too complicated, Minjun muttered. It's not complicated. You're just not paying attention. I am paying attention. Minho crouched between them. How about we make up our own handshake, one that's ours? They both stopped arguing and looked at him. Our own? Minjun repeated. Yeah, just for us. Minji grinned. Okay. For the next 20 minutes, they created the most ridiculous handshake in existence. Part high five, part fist bump, part dance move that made no logical sense. When they finally perfected it, they performed it for Naomi, who applauded with exaggerated enthusiasm. That was incredible, she said, smiling. We made it, Minji announced proudly. I can see that. The twins ran off to practice on their own. Naomi looked at Minho. They called you Dad. I heard. How does it feel? He sat down beside her. Terrifying. And perfect. She laughed softly. You're getting better at this. At what? Being human. He smiled. I had a good teacher. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the twins play. I got a job offer yesterday, Minho said after a while. Naomi turned to him. Yeah? Security consulting, completely legitimate, helping companies identify vulnerabilities in their systems. He paused. Turns out my particular skill set is valuable in legal contexts, too. Are you going to take it? I already did. She studied his face. No regrets? About giving up the empire? He shook his head. Not even for a second. What about the power, the control? He looked at the twins. At Minji trying to teach Minjun a cartwheel. At Minjun's serious concentration as he attempted it. I have more power now than I ever did before, he said quietly. How do you figure? Because I have something worth protecting. Something that makes me want to be better. He met her eyes. That's a different kind of power, the kind that actually matters. Naomi reached over and took his hand. It was the first time she'd initiated contact since he'd come back into her life. I'm proud of you, she said softly. His breath caught. Yeah? Yeah, she smiled. You kept your promise, you put them first, and you didn't run when it got hard. There were moments I wanted to. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Minji came running over. Mom, can we have a sleepover in the living room tonight? It's Sunday, Naomi reminded her. You have school tomorrow. Please, we'll go to bed early. Promise. Naomi looked at Minho. What do you think? It still surprised him, being included in these decisions. I think, he said carefully, that if you promise to go to bed early, then okay. Both twins cheered. But, he added, I get to pick the movie. No scary movies, Minjin said quickly. Deal. That evening, they built a fort in the living room. Blankets draped over furniture, pillows everywhere, string lights Naomi had saved from 5 years ago casting soft gold across chaos. They watched an animated film about a lost toy finding its way home. Minji fell asleep first, her head on Minho's shoulder. Minjin lasted 10 more minutes before curling up against Naomi. When the movie ended, neither adult moved. We should put them to bed, Naomi whispered. In a minute. They sat there, surrounded by blankets and pillows and the gentle breathing of sleeping children. I never thought I'd have this, Minho said quietly. What? This. Peace. Family. A reason to wake up that isn't wrapped in fear or obligation. Naomi looked at him in the dim light. Do you miss it? Your old life? He thought about the question. Really thought about it. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it, he admitted, when the only thing that mattered was power and survival. When I didn't have to worry about parent-teacher conferences or bedtime routines or whether I'm doing any of this right. But I wouldn't trade this for anything. He looked down at Minji, still sleeping against him. Not for all the empires in the world. Naomi smiled. You're doing it right, by the way. The parenting thing? Yeah. How can you tell? Because they feel safe with you. Because they laugh around you. Because they called you Dad. His eyes burned. Thank you, he said hoarsely. For what? For letting me try. For giving me a chance I didn't deserve. She reached across the space between them and touched his face gently. You deserved it the moment you chose them over everything else, she said softly. They carried the twins to bed, carefully, quietly, the way parents do when they don't want to wake the dreams. Afterward, they stood in the hallway between the children's rooms. I should go, Minho said. He'd been staying in a separate apartment across town, giving Naomi space, giving the twins time to adjust. But Naomi caught his hand. Stay, she said. He looked at her. Naomi, not... She shook her head quickly. Not like before, just stay. On the couch, so they can wake up and see you here. He nodded slowly. Okay. He fell asleep on the couch beneath the blanket fort they'd built together. And when he woke at 6 a.m. to find both twins trying to quietly make breakfast without waking anyone, and failing spectacularly, he realized something profound. He'd spent 15 years building an empire of fear. But this messy, chaotic, beautiful morning, this was the only empire that had ever mattered. Dad, we're making pancakes, Minji announced proudly. The kitchen was a disaster, flour everywhere, eggs broken on the counter, batter dripping onto the floor. I can see that, he said, biting back a smile. Can you help? Minjin asked. We can't reach the stove. Of course. And so, Kang Minho, former crime lord, former king of an underground empire, former man who ruled through fear, stood in a flour-covered kitchen at dawn, teaching his children how to make pancakes. They were terrible at it. He was terrible at it. But Naomi appeared in the doorway, saw the chaos and the laughter and the love wrapped up in burnt pancakes and spilled batter, and she smiled. Really smiled. For the first time in 6 years. And that was when Minho knew. He'd finally come home. Epilogue. 1 year later. The adoption papers were finalized on a Thursday. Not that it changed anything legally. Minho had always been their biological father. But it made it official in ways that mattered. In ways that meant if anything happened, there would be no question about who they belonged to, who they belonged with. The judge smiled as she signed the final document. "Congratulations, Mr. Kang. You're now legally and officially the father of Minji and Minjun." Beside him, the twins fidgeted in their nice clothes. They didn't fully understand what was happening, just that it was important. Naomi wiped her eyes. Afterward, they went for ice cream, because that's what families did. At the shop, Minjun looked up at Minho seriously. "So you're really our dad now? Forever?" "Forever," Minho confirmed. "Okay." Minjun went back to his chocolate ice cream, apparently satisfied. Minji leaned against Minho's arm. "I'm glad you're our dad." His chest tightened. "Me too, sweetheart." That night, after the twins were asleep, Naomi found Minho on the back porch again, a habit he'd never quite broken. But now, instead of staring into the darkness with the weight of an empire on his shoulders, he was just breathing, just being. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, settling beside him. "How different my life is now." "Better different or worse different?" "Better." He didn't hesitate. "Infinitely better." She smiled. "Good." They sat quietly, the Seattle night cool and clear around them. "I love you," Naomi said suddenly. He turned to her, stunned. She laughed at his expression. "Don't look so shocked. You've been living here for 6 months. You're an amazing father. You make terrible pancakes, but you try really hard. And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with who you've become." "Naomi." She kissed him, soft, gentle, full of promise and second chances, and the kind of hope that only comes from surviving the worst, and choosing to build something beautiful anyway. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you too," he whispered. "I never stopped." "I know." They sat there under the stars, two people who'd lost each other and found their way back through the most unlikely of paths. And inside, their children slept peacefully, dreaming of tomorrow. The empire Kang Minho built in the end wasn't made of fear or power or control. It was made of love, and it was the only empire that would last forever.
Wait, before the video ends, listen. If you've ever felt invisible, unnoticed, like the person you love doesn't really see you, this is for you. You can feel that closeness again, that spark, that connection, the way it used to be. But you have to take the first step. Scan the QR code now. Don't wait. Your chance to be seen, to be noticed, to be wanted. It's right here, right now.